people have been saying like, oh, we're going to waste this amazing defense. Like, I'm really getting to the point now where I'm worried that we're going to waste Todd Monken.
Welcome to My God Up Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Wood. In this episode, John Powell and I review Georgia's 14-3 win over the Kentucky Wildcats. As you can imagine, we talk a lot about what happened with the Georgia offense. But first, we discuss the great defensive performance and briefly discuss the special teams. As always, remember you can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and now YouTube at My God Up Podcast. Also, we'd love it if you'd subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you hear, leave us a rating of 5 stars with a review. You just might hear your review in a future episode. Now, let's join our conversation in progress. So, I would say for the Kentucky game, I think what Kentucky did pretty much matched up what we thought they would do. It was just the Georgia side that Georgia did not live up to your request of emptying the bench.
No, and that is a tragic story that I feel like we're just never going to reach the end until we get to the end of the season.
Yeah. Some people did get to come off the bench due to the injuries, which that was crazy, right? So we got hit with Pickens and McIntosh not being able to, they didn't even travel. We found that out in the morning. And then on offense, Cleveland goes down early in the second half. But with the defense, holy moly. So we already knew about Rice going in, and then DJ Daniel also didn't play. But then Rochester, Scene goes down, Stevenson gets banged up, Jordan Davis gets banged up, Quay Walker gets banged up. And then we hear about LeCount, not related to the game, but with his accident when we got home. So, you always want to get through these road games, or really any SEC game, right? I mean, you want to come out with a win. That box was checked, but relatively healthy, and that box was not checked.
Yeah, no, that's not at all what you want to see coming off of the bye week. You see a rash of injuries on particularly one side of the ball at a couple of key positions. The Jordan Davis injury, I feel like, is going to have repercussions on the rushing on our run defense, and frankly the defense overall, because he's just such a huge space eater and requires so much attention from the opposing team that that one really hurts.
Yeah, that's probably of what happened in the game, at least that was definitely the biggest one, and the one that gives you the most concern going forward, because we just don't have anyone else with that size. I mean, we're size, strength, agility, right? That he has to step in. I mean, especially considering that Rochester also went down. And it's not prognosis isn't sounding good for him either. For the rest of the year, I don't know. I guess we'll see. We'll see what happens with Davis. I do want to say, with LeCount though, I mean, that sounded awful. What happened. So, I mean, football aside, I'm happy that he's okay. I mean, that sounded pretty horrendous, that accident.
I didn't realize it was as bad as it was until I found out that he was in the ICU and had just gotten let go. And I was like, oh, shoot, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so it was motorcycle. He hit a car hit him, and then his motorcycle went into the oncoming lane of traffic, and I think the way I read it was that his motorcycle got hit by a car afterwards. So just thankfully, I guess he had separated from the motorcycle at that point, I guess. So, but concussion, bruised ribs, shoulder injury, no surgery needed. So, just glad he's, with us, right? I mean, obviously could have been a lot worse. So we'll just be thankful for that. Okay, a couple of things. So looking at our predictions, we'll get through those quickly. So Georgia over under 1.5 QBs playing. I took the under, you took the over. It was the under. We only saw the mailman, and we will dive into that fact much more, I assume. Kentucky 0.5 interceptions thrown. We both took the over, and that was the under. Although LeCount had one in his breadbasket that he dropped, that would have hit the over. That was tough.
Jim,
He
don't remind me.
he did have a nice somersault after it, but
A
I know
couple of them.
yeah, I know he was frustrated with that because that was like a cinch pick six for him. And the score, obviously, we were way off there. So I had 31-10, you had 32-17. The defense outperformed what we thought, but the offense way underperformed what we were
Story
looking
of our
for.
lives.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know anything specific you wanna go in. I feel like we could talk about the mailman for like 30 minutes, but I don't know that we so much want to. But
Well, I mean, there's really no other way around it, to be honest with you, because like, what more can you say about the defense? I mean, we went down, we had all these injuries. I mean, obviously, LeCount played the whole game, but lost Rochester, lost Davis, lost Scene, and they really didn't skip a beat. I mean, we shut them
yeah,
out in the second half. Like, I mean, all of the things that we talked about happened. Like, we basically they were a one-dimensional team coming into this game, and we made them a one-dimensional team coming, during the game by completely shutting down their rushing attack. They had no opportunities. Fortunately, they won the turnover battle, but I think this might have been the first game this season where they lost the game but won the turnover battle. All the other games where they
right.
won the turnover battle, they won.
Well,
So
they turned those two turnovers into 0 points, right? They got no points off of turnovers. So,
right, right.
again, kudos to the defense for stepping up, right, when the offense, puts them in a hole.
Exactly. And, that was encouraging to see. And we had obviously Aziz Ojolari is having a season of the ages. If this was a normal season, like he could probably put some pressure on the Pollock record of for sacks in an entire season. So
Yeah,
that is really, really encouraging for the defense for next year as well, because he's so young and I'm hoping he sticks around. Um
right.
but the defense just really shined. I mean, obviously, a pick six changes some of the scoring there, but other than that, you really couldn't complain too much about 3 points
Yeah.
and multiple sacks, shutting down the run defense. I mean, they got a couple of little plays here and there, but for the most part, we did exactly what we thought we were going to do on defense.
Yeah, I mean, outside of that one sustained, I think it was like, I mean, so their drive for their field goal, it was impressive, right? I mean, that was like a 94-yard drive. And well, obviously, but they didn't make it to the end zone, right? So they were 94 yards away to start and then drove it and got their field goal. It was one of those weird things where kind of like in the heat of the moment, and probably more so in the first half, there was some frustration kind of with what was going on with the defense. But now it just being like the push that Kentucky seemed to be getting, we seem to be kind of playing back a bit. And so, I mean, I would say looking back, I mean, we were doing a bit of a bend but don't break. And when you do that and you only give up 3 points, then you definitely did not break. So, I mean, I would say, kudos to Lanning for the game plan there. I mean, it certainly worked.
Yeah, you and I were texting. It seemed like our defensive game plan was to we were tentative a little bit. We wanted to see what Gatewood could do through the air. So, you and I were messaging back and forth about it seemed like that we would line up and our defensive line would have three, maybe four versus six. And it was like 4v6 kind of thing.
Yeah.
And they just had they had hat for a hat and were given a push on the defensive line for a period there, and it's almost like we turned the corner. I want to say it was around just before halftime or like right around mid game. I feel like that they kind of switched and we started loading the box. We realized that Gatewood wasn't going to be much of a threat throwing downfield, and we just pinned our ears back and just looked to shut them down completely.
Yeah, I mean, we looked at before, obviously when we recorded the preview, we didn't know about Wilson's injury, but just talked about the fact that they don't really pass. That's not their thing. That's not what they do. And that played out. And I feel like it played out even more so with Gatewood. Like, I feel like they're even more reliant on the run. Now, they ended up having more passing attempts than we did in the game, but that just has to do with the fact that late, those last couple of drives, they were trying to throw to, play catch up mode when they finally tried to do it.
It's also a low bar, Jim.
Yeah, well, very true, very true, very true. It's hard not to throw more pass attempts than Georgia did. So yeah, so that was interesting. I guess the only other thing I would say, like the substitution patterns, I kind of felt were odd, but again, hard to question when you only get 3 points. So, and the only thing I'll point out is like I think I mentioned this to you, like Adam Anderson tweeted out like just want to get a chance. And I know the way I saw it was Blake Herring had retweeted it and said, stay humble, like your time's coming, that kind of stuff. I was wondering like where is Adam Anderson during the game, but again, I think I mean we're kind of using him as like a pass rush specialist. They weren't throwing a lot. At the end, when they were throwing, he came in and wreaked a lot of havoc. So I don't know. I would just say, Adam, your time is probably coming in this next game. They pass a lot. We'll talk about that when we preview Florida. But I don't know. I guess that was the only other thing on the defense. But yeah, I mean, hard to argue with only giving up 3 points.
I honestly didn't notice that. When I went through and was watching the game, I didn't realize that Adam Anderson wasn't playing as much. But yeah, I mean, he's definitely going to get some. He's definitely going to get some reps in this next week's game.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess before we go to the offense, I just did want to say on special teams, I would say they were a little less special this week. Didn't live up to the high bar that they've set for themselves. Kickoffs were still great. Camarda was still great, but just the poor field goal attempt at the end of the first half, low snap led to the bad hold, led to the block. And then, like we talked about, kind of their reaction when that happened. No one was like scrambling to get to the ball to tackle if anyone picked it up. And actually, it was Camarda that made the tackle when Kentucky tried to run it back. So again, Camarda definitely a special teams player of the game. And then like we had kind of like the reverse hidden yardage with Jackson returning punts. We talked about before, like the hidden yardage that he gained by, making like those kind of high risk punt fielding in prior games, right? Where like the ball maybe could have rolled an extra 10 yards, but he fielded it to prevent that from happening. Felt like he kind of either fair caught what he shouldn't have, or maybe even should have let it go. So not the best game for the special teams, I would say.
I think a lot of that would probably had to do, with number one, not wanting him to get hurt, knowing that I don't know, who knows how long Pickens is going to be out. So number one, not wanting him to get hurt, and number two, that Australian kicker, did really well. I mean, he was no slouch in the kicking game as well. Wasn't he like a Ray Guy winner last year or something like that?
Yes, he was.
But you've also got the situation where you know we know that our rushing attack, I mean our offense, the game plan basically was that we knew that we could move the ball. Unfortunately, we just didn't move and make the best decisions along the way. But
Yeah.
I mean, Zamir White had kudos to him. He called it. The rushing attack had a breakout game. Like, I mean, he had a career high that was by far, his best rushing effort in a Georgia uniform. So that's, if he's hitting stride coming into the cocktail party, like that's something that I feel like is going to be very beneficial for us, because the passing side, I think if you'd have told us that, before the game that we were only going to throw it 13 times, and he was going to throw 2 interceptions, have a batted pass, and only throw to the wide receivers. I think he threw to the wide receivers like 6 times or something like that.
I think that's right, because yes. So I was sorry. So receiving, I know, like, so Cook had 4 catches. So I mean, of his 9 completions, 4 of them were to Cook. So he had, 5. So he definitely had 4, I would say, completions to receivers, right? So it was 3 to Jackson, 1 to Burton, because the other reception was Washington on that nice
Washington,
pass down the
exactly.
sideline. So yeah, and I know there was, like, for the incompletions. So let's see, so 2 of the 4 were picks. The other 2 incompletions, there was that one to Burton on, I think, the second or third drive that was just he threw it too high, and then the other incompletion was to Kendall Milton. So there was kind of like a little
Hmm.
Milton kind of went out into the flat, which again, like on all of those, I felt like Milton probably wasn't the right guy to go to. Actually, when I watched that again, Fitzpatrick was pretty open on the other side of the field. He kind of went and like no one went with him, which I feel like is
Story of
really
their
kind of
life.
yeah, kind of par for the course for what we've seen. And I would definitely say go watch Battle Hymnal. They dove into that a lot and did some good analysis reviewing that and those situations. So yeah, so career day for Zamir White, that was awesome. Also, one thing I did want to point out, and I know we were texting about like not huge fans of Jordan Rogers and what he was doing on the color commentary during the game, which was I will say like one of the an additional thing that we were suffering with like pandemic games is I mean those guys weren't even there. Like Cole Kubelik was on the sideline, but Tom Hart and Jordan Rogers they're at home and they were like talking over each other, you know, during the broadcast a bit, kind of like we do on the podcast sometimes. So it's like I get it, like you know, you're in a different place, but like that has kind of stunk. In the grand scheme of things, it's not that big of a deal. But so one of the things that he did point out for Rogers. From like his pre-game talks with the coaches was he was saying that Monken had said there's certain things that Kendall Milton like can't do right, like he doesn't know all the protections and that the package is smaller when he's in the game. But I one of the things that like I felt like kind of countered that was that nice completion to Washington. So on that pass play, first drive of the second half, it was actually play action fake to Milton, right? So I guess so that's good. I would say between what Monken's telling the the production crew before the game and then what we're seeing in the game, I think is showing a bit of Milton's growth, right? Like they trusted him to be that back in there, execute the play action, and pick guys up. So that was
Well,
nice to see.
well, if that's the case, like I didn't hear that. I mean, that makes sense because I think pretty much when Milton's in the game, he's pretty much received a handoff.
Yes.
So that's actually good for us to flex when Kendall Milton's in the game, throwing to him in the flat as a check down or throwing downfield to Darnell Washington, which, can we please dial up more Darnell Washington, please? Um,
Seriously.
so
Yeah.
so if we're showing flashes of, hey, we're not afraid to throw the ball with Kendall Milton in the game, that gives the defense more hesitation, when we go to play the Alabamas and the Floridas of the world. Having game film where basically when Milton is in, we're running the ball, that gives the defense a key, and they can just crash down, put 9 guys in the box and not be afraid that we're ever going to throw the pass with Kendall Milton in the game. So that makes me glad that we threw it at least twice with him in. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Agreed. All right. Do you want to talk? Well, I guess we keep talking offense and kind of get into to mailman a bit. So, okay. So one thing, like I think a lot of people were kind of lamenting heading in, like, oh no, Kirby said we're going to get to our brand of football. It's going to be man ball. And then during the game and after the game, I've seen a lot of lamentation around, oh gosh, that was it. It was man ball. We've got to be able to do more. And like, so my response to that would be, you know, we did what we needed to win the game. It felt like if we threw 0 pass attempts, we may have even scored more points in the way that we were running the ball. Like especially, I know, like we had texted back and forth. The first interception, it felt like, why the heck were we throwing there? We had just run the ball down their throat to get there, and then we throw it, and it kind of lived up to the old school. When you throw the ball, 3 things can happen, and 2 of them are bad. One of those bad things happened on that play. So I don't know, and it felt like, and like can that beat Alabama? No, but we weren't playing Alabama; we were playing Kentucky. So I feel like they had a game plan to beat Kentucky, and we did beat Kentucky. And there was plenty of plays there to get well more than just the 14 points that we got. We left a lot out there on that field on Saturday, unfortunately.
yeah, no, man, I people have been talking about, Kirby Smart, can't develop a quarterback. Fortunately, we're instead of recording on Sunday, we're recording on Monday. So we had the benefit of hearing what Kirby had to say. And, he mentioned in the press conference that Todd Monken has complete autonomy with the offense. Obviously they sync up, they're on the same page, etc. So if Monken thought that we had a better quarterback option, he would be in the game.
Yeah.
And the fact that he said that, like, I think that that should give dog fans ease that Kirby is not the one that's holding things back. And I think, Nathan Lawrence has talked about this. Like, you think that if Kirby thinks that someone else is going to give us a better opportunity to win, that person would be playing in the game. We're not holding
Yeah.
anything back. We're not holding, our bag of tricks back. Like, we're trying to win football games. Yeah, we won a 2-score game here against Kentucky, but like, okay, so if Munkin has autonomy and Stetson's in the game, that tells me that he's Munkin believes that he's the best option that we have.
Yeah.
The problem with that is that maybe he's not playing to the same level that he's practicing. Because the thing that's given me fits is the fact that he continues to make decisions that are poor, and his mechanics. And when I say mechanics, maybe I mean fundamentals. His fundamentals are broken or flawed, or he's thinking about it too much or something, because he did none of the things that Kirby said that they worked on. They worked on checkdowns. They worked on ball security when he's moving around. He did none of that. That to
Yep.
me is a bigger problem, like big picture, to this offense's ceiling potential. And I owe Will Leach an apology, because you and I have talked about this. That Will had made a comment in the recent podcast for Wait and Sits last Saturday that 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 he Stetson was never going to win a national. We're never going to win a national championship with Stetson as the quarterback, and the ceiling is basically getting to the SEC championship. And we're not going to beat Alabama. We might not beat Florida, etc. So, and I kind of balked at that, leading up to this, because I felt like that we could make corrections, that we could make changes. And this Kentucky game should have been a perfect opportunity for Stetson to show his progression as a quarterback, for the coaching staff to show that he's progressed and that they've progressed in coaching him to do the things that we've been talking about doing. When you're getting passes batted down, you've got to step up in the pocket. When you're getting passes batted down, you've got to find throwing lanes to open receivers. So, people have been saying like, oh, we're going to waste this amazing defense. Like, I'm really getting to the point now where I'm worried that we're going to waste Todd Monken. Like, that guy has coached out of his mind, getting guys open in an offense that by and large has the same players from last year, with the exception of the quarterback. You know, we did nothing. Like, our wide receivers couldn't recreate separation at all last year. And
Yeah.
Monken comes in, and we've got multiple guys running across the field. Like, you did your film review, you had Kyrus Jackson. I didn't see that play, when I was watching the review, but when I saw that, like, that's a perfect example where he's making bad decisions and not stepping up in the pocket and actually finding the lanes to throw in and find receivers through his progression. So to me, like, if Stetson's the guy, like, at some point he's got to make a decision in his head that he's going to do the things that the coaches are telling him to do, that he's going to do the things that the film dictates that he does. I mean, at this point,
Yeah.
Florida's got enough film on Stetson to just say, hey guys, you know what? If there's anybody within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, don't worry about him, because he's never going to throw the ball to them.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly right. I mean, he's making it harder than it should be on himself, right? Like, he's throwing these deep passes when he's got these guys underneath running wide open, and like, part of it, there were some jokes around like, well, maybe he can't see those guys over the line or whatever, but that play, which by the way, we have a YouTube channel now, so go like our YouTube channel. It's also My Got a Podcast, and I put up a video on Sunday, analyzing that first interception. And I think the first part of it, what I said, I think I'll go back on that. I was trying to say maybe he was looking at Zamir White instead of like as option number one in that first interception, but I don't think that's right. But the bottom line was, like, ultimately he should have thrown to Jackson, who was running wide open over the middle on a short route, and like, he should have gone away from his throw to Burton, because there was no way to throw that, because he's had a defensive end right in his face. So I've got an analogy for you, because again, with this, where where I keep saying that he's making it harder on himself. He needs to stop kind of the go for broke long passes, right? Because that's kind of been the one to Washington work. There was also a beautiful ball to Cook, which again, both of those though, like that was the first read and it was there and he took it. It's when that first read isn't there and looking for something underneath is what I feel like he's missing. Do you remember the show Playmakers? It was on ESPN. ESPN's short-lived professional football drama. Did you ever watch that?
No.
Okay, so it only lasted one season because the NFL basically like shut it down because there was too much controversial topics that were hitting a little too close to home for the NFL. But there's a scene in the show Playmakers where they have, it's professional football, so you've got your hotshot, young quarterback who thinks he's invincible and can do everything and can throw the ball 70 yards, right? And then you've got I can't remember, this is a long time ago. I can't remember if it was the quarterback's coach or the offensive coordinator who is, also he's not much older than the hotshot quarterback, but he played like Division II football. So there's a scene where they're at practice and the assistant coach is telling the starting quarterback the things that he needs to change. And the quarterback basically says, what do you know? You played Division II. I'm a professional. I can sling it. You couldn't do anything. And so they make a bet on who can get the ball closest to the end zone on their inside practice facility. So the hotshot quarterback goes first. He winds up and he throws it and lands just shy of the end zone. He just threw the ball like 70 yards in the air, whatever, everyone oohs and ahs. So what does the quarterback's coach, who was a Division II quarterback, do? He throws a 5-yard pass into the cargo area of a golf cart that's driving by in the facility. And the golf cart carries the ball into the end zone. So ultimately the ball traveled farther, right? And so that's like this, kind of like in Tin Cup, right? With Kevin Costner hitting the ball. And then, the other guy, it was Don Johnson, right? He hits it down the cart path, right? And the ball goes further. It's that kind of mentality, right? And I feel like the mailman thinks he's the guy with the huge arm and he thinks he's the big arm talent and that he's going to just sling it and be this gunslinger. And he'd be better served having the opposite mentality of, hit your check down, get the ball to your playmakers and let them make it happen. Right. And I feel like if he would just do that, like, I feel like the problem is almost like his ego. Like and I'm not saying that he has like a huge ego. Maybe it's too much of the chip on his shoulder. Like he's trying to prove I was doubted. I'm going to show you guys. Show them by, putting up points and putting up yards. You don't have to throw the ball even 30 yards in the air to do that. Right. You've got these guys that are right in front of you. Kyrus Jackson, James Cook, Washington, McKitty, these guys that can make things happen when you get the ball into their hands. That's all you got to do. And Todd Monken is making it so easy for you, and you're making it harder on yourself. So I don't know. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And by the way, this podcast is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. With every episode, we talk about something totally off the wall. I had no idea that we would go into such a long analysis of an old ESPN show.
Go check it out. It only lasted one season, and it's actually pretty good. I don't know. I really liked it. I was pretty disappointed when that show got canceled, actually, but I can't even remember when that was. It was like 2004 or something, maybe. I don't know, 5. It was a long time ago.
Yeah, so Eric Zier made a comment at halftime where he said that I would not be upset if Georgia never threw the ball for the rest of the game. At halftime, he said that.
Yeah, and he's a quarterback. And he's a quarterback, and he used to sling it around like crazy.
And I totally agree with it. I told you, I didn't get to, I was on soccer duty on Saturday, so we were coming back, and it was kind of midway through the second quarter when I was able to actually like get to a TV. So I watched the game, unfortunately, but even when I was listening to it on the radio and stuff, which is where I got the comments and whatnot, doing the yard work, but just listening to it just sounded like it was a painful watching experience, and you kind of echoed that at the end you're like, what just happened?
Yeah, the last play of the game, I was like, did the game just end? That was weird. What just happened?
Yeah. So I would have been totally fine. Like, it appeared that I think someone on the broadcast said that it appeared like, or no, it was someone on the battle hymn. It appeared like Stoops and Kirby just had like a gentleman's agreement to just get through the game and get it over with as fast as possible and just get out of there. So like, okay, so if we had just run the ball, I would have been totally fine because we were just dominating them on every rush. Like I told
Yeah.
you in my rewatch when I watched it on Sunday to watch the full game start to finish, that after the first quarter, 2 quarters, like having looked at it, why did we ever throw the ball? Like why did we ever try to throw the ball? Like why?
Yeah.
And you can do that against teams like Kentucky, but teams like Florida where it's like you've got to start throwing the ball. Like I mean, I just I don't know. I'm really really worried about the Florida game at this point because some of those passes, the Darnell Washington pass, like, yeah, he dropped it right in the breadbasket, but I imagine against a better defense, that might have been intercepted. And we'd be going back and doing film over and saying, oh, wow, there was a guy that was a check down wide open. I almost wish that someone would give Stetson a rule like, look, you are not allowed to throw the ball if someone is in if two guys are anywhere near the receiver. Like if you see two defenders anywhere near the receiver, like you're not allowed to throw the ball. You can only throw the
Yeah.
ball to guys that are wide open. Shoot, I cussed.
Well,
Dang it.
0 shows since the last curse word. Update the sign.
I'm gonna hear about that from my son.
I'll whip it out. But so, yeah, I mean, totally. Like that's the thing is because when he does that, it's like when you go back and watch, there was someone who was wide open, and that's kind of what I see is like the beauty of this Monken offense is that. And I'm not going to say every play, like there's, it's not that much, but I mean, a lot of the time there's someone who's wide open and it's usually a pretty easy throw. Like if it's down the field, they're really open, right? Like James Cook was on that long pass play. I mean, he was wide open. That was amazing. But on these other ones, you've got these guys coming across short, across the middle that are also very wide open, hopefully with a good throwing lane. The only thing I'll say about that is just run the yes, if we had run the ball every single down, I don't know, maybe the score is probably kind of close to the same. I love to run the ball, but I was kind of like, man, we are running a lot. Like I said leading in, some sense of balance, like kind of near 50-50. We weren't anywhere near 50-50 on Saturday. So it was definitely heavy on the running of the ball, but you know what? Like they couldn't stop it other than they did keep us out of the end zone, except for the first drive of each half. So, I mean, got to give them some credit, but we also shot ourselves in the foot pretty bad.
I mean, at this point, if we're throwing the ball, I hate to say this, but like if we're throwing the ball in the red zone, we need to just stop. Like someone needs to go and get a newspaper and go to Monken or go to Kirby or Stetson Bennett and just say, no, no, no. Because when we get in the red zone is when we are most likely to throw interceptions. Don't quote me on it, but this is just flying off the cuff. But like, I feel like that multiple interceptions throughout the year have been within striking distance or in where we are in a position where we can put points on the board, but he throws a stupid interception or something ridiculous happens like the batted pass or a tipped pass or whatever. Like they've all been in situations where had we just run the ball 3-4 times, we could have 3 points on the board and move on.
Yeah. The pick against Kentucky, the first pick, I definitely felt that way. Like it did feel like, why were we throwing on that down? Because we had just coming off a big run the play before. And I mean, again, like you can't run it every down, and like it was a pretty safe play. I mean, they were running a wide receiver screen to Burton, and it was there. Like his pump fake to me also was kind of weird. Like that's why I was trying to figure out, was he trying to go to White? What was he doing? Like he didn't need to pump fake. If he had just dropped back and thrown it to Burton right away, it's a successful play. And then the other thing is he did pump fake. It didn't improve his view of Burton at all. It got worse. The guy got even closer. Don't pull the trigger. Like don't throw it, right? I mean, step up in the pocket, move around. Kyrus Jackson's wide open in front of you, or even take a sack, scramble, run forward with 2 hands on the ball, please, and get a yard or 2 or whatever. But like, don't turn a bad play into a disaster, right? And that's what he did there.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm you know, you mentioned earlier in the show that he was you know, that he thinks that he's got this thing. I don't. Maybe he's just stubborn. Maybe he's just hard headed. You know, it took him a while to. You know, he's the son of a preacher, and you know, based on the stories that we've heard, you know, it took him a while to come to Jesus, kind of thing. Well, it's taken him a while to come to the Kirby Smart Jesus. Like,
Yeah, and I don't. Yeah, I don't. I do. Like, I think it's, and I can't decide. I'm not sure whether it's like, like true ego or whatever versus like, I think he's trying to prove himself, right? Because there's a lot of doubters, right? And there were doubters beforehand. The coaches doubted him, right? And so I want him to focus less on I'm proving you guys wrong. Like, you've already done that. You're the starting quarterback of Georgia, right? And you have a very long leash, right? I mean, full admission, I texted you and I texted my dad during the game. I want Mathis, like, I'm done. Put Mathis in, right? Where is Mathis? Why aren't we changing? I mean, I'll fully admit that. Like I said that. Clearly, that is not happening, right? So that's where I feel like, and like, we haven't been sitting here debating, Mathis versus Daniels versus Beck or whatever, because the coaches have showed us that that ain't happening. So I don't even really see a point in talking about it, to be honest. So like, you've proven the doubters. You are the starting quarterback. You don't have to have this chip on your shoulder and prove that they did it wrong or whatever. Like, they've already admitted it to you. You're now the starter. So you don't have to, you don't have to be, all we need him to be is a game manager. And like, I mean, and again, and he could be, I think he has the tools to do it, and he's got these wide open receivers. Just throw it to him. I don't know. That's where the things you're so right. Like, and I had already wrote it down, and you said it before I even could. But like, of the things that last week Kirby said, ball security and checkdowns. Man, I hope they work on checkdowns more. They need to work on those same two things again this week. I guess, right? And I mean, if you can just improve that, man, because I don't know. Again, Battle Hymnal guys were saying that, and I know Graham Coffey said, like, if he would just do that, just hit the check down, this offense could be great,
it
and it
really
could be.
could. I mean, it really could. I
Yeah,
mean, who knows what happens if you hit any of these guys? You know, if you hit even on that play to Washington, you know, obviously it was a good play, but you know, who knows what happens if Milton gets into the open field? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
we don't know what happens because we don't get an opportunity to even see it. So like the whole nonsense that Kirby said, you know, we're gonna that long article that we talked about in the last episode with Seth Emerson, that the long and short was take what the defense gives you. For the love of God, take what the defense gives you. Stetson Bennett. Like,
yeah, yeah.
there's a man standing with no defenders around him. If he gets the ball, there's literally no telling what could possibly happen if he were to take the ball and run up the field, especially with our skill position players that, you know, are very shifty. They've shown that we can get yards after contact. I mean, I think Kendall Milton leads the SEC or something like that in yards after contact or something like that. But and like,
Mm-hmm.
even like Kyrus Jackson, you know, yards after contact with him from a wide receiver's perspective, like there's a number of guys on the field that can make people miss. And God bless him, Jermaine, like Burton, holy cow, like I that guy is probably, I imagine the average Georgia fan is like, man, why are they even throwing it to Burton? Because if he always drops it or whatever. But man, Stetson is doing him zero favors most of the time.
Yeah, I did that on that first pass, like in the heat of the moment. I was like, man, catch the ball, Burton. But I mean, it was way over his head. I mean, he did a good job just to touch it. Like, it was pretty
All
impressive that he touched it. You know?
all he had to do, all Stetson had to do was put it on the numbers. I told you, it looked like he threw it thinking the guy was 10 feet tall. Like, come on, dude. Like,
Yeah, that.
it's either one extreme or the other. Like, he throws the ball 10 feet over the guy's head, or he throws it where a lineman just bats it down. And someone, one of my neighbors mentioned, and I haven't actually like gone back to look at it. I mean, I kind of seen it a little bit here and there, but like, does Stetson like have a bit of a sidearm release point? Like, is he not releasing
It's
the ball
a
fully over his head?
Yeah, so he has like a 3/4 release. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not directly over the top. So like, yeah, so he's 5'11" in cleats and has a 3/4 release. So I mean that, but again, like, yeah, I mean, throw to the open lane, and I felt like that was the thing that's like, we talked about. do some things like roll them out, get the big throwing lanes, and they were there. I gotta say, like I'm incredibly impressed with Todd Monken. Like I feel like his game plans are good. I questioned the Alabama game plan, but now looking back on it and after watching Kentucky and just what I've seen, I think it was pretty good. Like you just got to hit the open guys. I mean, I don't know. I love what I've seen from Monken. He's not asking a lot out of his quarterback, and I don't know. Hopefully Stetson can get it together because it seems like he's the guy, right? I mean, I don't see that changing. Unless
Yeah,
the only way I see that changing at this point is if Daniels gets fully healthy because clearly he's not. So I don't know.
that's something Kirby mentioned. He basically confirmed in the press conference today, in a roundabout way, that JT Daniels is basically still not ready from an injury standpoint. So that leaves, and with all the rumors that happened afterwards about whether or not Mathis is part of the team or whatever, it's conspiracy theory time, like
Yeah,
conspiracy theory alert. Like obviously Mathis is not getting an opportunity. So, like, I don't know, when I was talking about, we need to put teams away, we need to take our opportunities on offense, all of them as much as possible, as fast as possible, so that we can get guys experience in the game. Like, I would have loved to have seen another quarterback come in, and because we're leading by so much, to see another quarterback come in to get an opportunity against an actual in-game situation, because I have a feeling like God, like, you know, obviously LeCount had an accident. Like, can we wrap Stetson Bennett in bubble wrap for
yeah,
if he's going to be the starter moving forward, and that he's the guy that gives us the best opportunity to win? Like, we better hope that he stays healthy, because if he takes off like he did against Kentucky, and he does it with a team like Florida or a team like Alabama or something like that, and he takes a hit the wrong way, like, I mean, I think that the Battle Hymn guys were talking about, like, slide. You've got the first down, just slide. Like, why are you trying to
yeah,
battle for more
yeah.
yards? Like, again, it goes back to what we've been saying, is his decision making process is somehow short circuiting when he steps out onto the game day field, and I don't
Mm.
understand what he's doing. This isn't JUCO. This isn't where he came from before. I can't remember the school he was at before, but it's not high school. This is the SEC. You cannot take hits like that and expose the football in ways that he's been doing time after time.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm with you. I don't know. All I can do is hope they figure it out this week because the competition gets a lot bigger come Saturday. I don't know. You got anything else? I think we've kind of beaten the dead horse on the Kentucky game.
Yeah,
Uh,
obviously a win's a win. A double-digit win against an SEC opponent is never something to kind of shake a stick at. But this is 2020, and we're here to be miserable.
awesome, awesome. Hey, the one thing I'll say to end this and segue into the last one is, at least we don't have a WWE style coach who shows up to the press conference dressed as Darth Vader. So I don't know. Maybe we can end it on that.
Oh, geez, Louise, and doing the voice too to go with it.
All right, man. Well, hey, we will talk again soon to preview the Florida game. We'll put the Kentucky game to bed. And we got plenty to talk about leading up into the world's largest outdoor cocktail party next week.
Yes, sir. Thank you, man. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.